party started, I believe our first reader is Dave Waldrop.
Wait,
Or should we go?
oh, he's not ready yet. Camera boy's not ready yet.
I'd like to inform you all while he's getting ready. I would like to say that I've been writing some really brilliant stuff lately. Of course, I'd be lying if I said that, so there's no use in saying it. Ready, Auburn?
Yeah.
You want to get every second of this now? I think.
Yes, he does. That's right.
I'm going to read a piece called Promoting Acceptance with Students. There's a new student who moved into Cullowhee Valley School during the 1991 academic year. A boy with little athletic ability, little confidence, who was short in stature and lonesome in appearance. I sensed that this 8th grader might need some intervention by someone in order to be accepted, to fit in. I studied our class and thought about Corey as a candidate to approach for this special mission. Corey was a tall, left-handed baseball player who was popular among his peers, those from his rural environment, as well as from the university community. I never had much interaction with Corey other than observing his demeanor as a baseball player in the local Little League program and at Cullowhee Valley. I had no way of knowing if he would accept the challenge to be a friend to a newcomer. However, since Corey was popular, friendly, and cooperative with teachers and school staff, I believed it'd be worth my time to ask him to take on the school project. I really believe that if only Corey would not be a part of rejecting the new student, it might ease the transition for him to his new school. Soon I asked Corey to come by my office in order to make a presentation to him. I asked him for his help. At first I reminded Corey of his peers' positive viewpoint of him and how he seemed to enjoy the acceptance that he had developed during his school years in the school. Then we talked about how he might feel if he suddenly had to move to a new school where he'd have to work to establish friendships and acceptance. Corey was soon able to see where our conversation was headed. Luckily, he mentioned the new boy as someone like we were talking about. I knew then that I had zeroed in on a student who would be able and willing to provide some acceptance and friendship to a boy who would welcome it from a popular boy with a beaming smile. I asked Corey for his help. He agreed to take on the project of making another student feel like he belonged at Cullowhee Valley. During the remainder of the school year, Corey and I chatted a few times about the positive effect the relationship was having on him as well as the new student. Corey was proud of what he was doing in a rather quiet way to create an accepting environment for one special student and the school overall. The student who had been the focus for Corey and me moved out of state when school was out. So I never had an opportunity to discuss the relationship with him. After Corey graduated from high school and got married, he began working for the North Carolina Department of Transportation. He and his wife have children who attend public school in Jackson County. He and I have had occasion to talk about the good old days and how he helped a fellow student to feel accepted in school. I like to think that a seed has been planted that grew to be a tall, wide-spreading tree of acceptance around Corey and his family as they grow through life together. I am grateful to Corey for his help then and now. Communities are made stronger by acceptance of others than by rejection. That's all I got.
You were a good teacher.
Now, we don't do one more split. I'm kidding.
Mr. Baker.
David, on that note, somebody had a little post on that evil box, and they were talking about this autistic kid in a high school in Texas, and how these two big football players were asked to kind of, befriend him and watch after him. And it went on into more detail about what a bonding it was for the kid and those two football players, and along the same lines.
Yeah.
It's about people helping people. So
Yeah,
thank you for that.
Someone just has to kind of present an idea to people a lot of times, and sometimes I don't think school personnel sees enough of those opportunities to say, would you consider this?
Yeah. Were you wanting to say something?
Yeah, that's what you people have said to me. And I appreciate it so good. And I should have met you all day.
Thank you for that. And there is no I in team. That's it. Okay. Now, I'm going to read a little piece. My chief editor suggested that I go back and start reading a little from, I've got a novel coming out, most of you may be aware. We just finished the cover design and da-da-da-da-da. Should be out in about a month, hopefully. And so I'm going to try to read a piece or two along as I go. But you still got to pay $21.95 to get the whole book. Sweat ran from underneath their leather helmets as the rowers grunted and strained in an effort to pull the long oak oars through the choppy waters. The three drummers, one on each ship, pounded goatskin drums in a frenzy of constant rhythm, and together they drove the dragon-headed ships through the mud onto the sand and gravel beach. The great oars hauled inside the ship, the rowers turned warriors, grabbed their heavy bronze shields and scrambled to follow Thorma and Tom Lee onto the beach. The ship sat in the shallow water and listed slightly as if the dragons were finally able to rest after the long, rough swim across the dark waters. Thorma and Tom Lee and the other Norsemen leaped from the gunwales of the sand, crunching loudly beneath their heavy sealskin boots as they gathered round their leader. Olaf, standing beside his brother and wanting badly to be the center of attention, shouted orders to the war band as together they began to beat their sword handles against their shields. The noise intensified as the drummers, who climbed down from the ship, joined in the pounding, and the Norsemen roared like demons. While the Norsemen's sword hammered against iron-strapped shields down on the rocky beach, many of the men of Oban, some who simply dropped their weapons, began to run in fear. For some time, 68 Howland Norsemen continued to beat sword handles against shields and drink mead from leather-covered gourds. The savage ritual was intended not only to inflame their battle fever, but also to frighten the enemy. The noise was deafening, and more men of Oban fled, leaving women and children behind. Such was their fear of the Viking horde. Finally, when all the mead had been drunk and Thorma felt them sufficiently ready, he shouted a hail to Odin, and the horde broke from the huddle. The air shook as the Norsemen raced screaming up the incline towards the village, the younger men leading the way, eager to show their bravery. "Look, father, they're running away," shouted Tom Lee in youthful excitement as he watched several men throw down their weapons and retreat towards the pastures. Tom Lee raised his sword high, his heart pounding in his chest as he moved up the beach. Thorma, always level-headed, cautiously eyed a small group of about 20 brave but foolish village men moving warily towards his throng. "They're not all running," he grunted as he watched his brother storm past him and charge towards the defenders. The archers, Oban's only real defense, waited behind as the front group of defenders moved wearily to the attack. On William's order, 10 iron-tipped shafts flew towards their targets and 10 more readied. "Shields!" shouted Thorma as he looked up and saw the iron bees descending on him. As one, the battle-wise Norsemen dropped to one knee and covered themselves with their bronze-plated shields. "Damn the archers," grunted Olaf as the 10 arrows slammed into the mass of kneeling warriors. One Norseman collapsed, spitting blood with an arrow through his neck. Another angrily pulled a bloody shaft from his thigh. William smiled grudgingly as the archer's handiwork and notched another arrow as the howls of the wounded Norseman rang in his ears. Encouraged by these cries, the men of Oban redoubled their deadly efforts with the ye bow, which later became known as the longbow. In a heated effort to punish the invaders, however, several of the archers soon ran out of arrows. After only a few minutes, even more quivers lay empty, until at last the kneeling horde sensed their chance. "Now," shouted Thorma. With gusto and unrelenting force, the flood of helmeted warriors swept through the band of armed villagers like the Roman legions had swept through the wild, unorganized Celtic tribes 1,000 years before. Smoke soon enveloped the huts closest to the beach as the faster warriors spread havoc. Flames streaked the filthy skies, and awful wails seemed to creep along the street between the burning huts. Bodies lay everywhere as Thorma slowly walked up the beach. Presuming the man dead, he began to step over the body of a young man whom his brother Olaf had just disemboweled. As he looked down, the man's eyes flew open and he stared painfully up at the big Norseman. "It is a terrible thing to watch a sword rip open a man's stomach," said Thorma, speaking aloud to the dying villager. The boy, for he was merely only 15, was desperately trying to hold his bowels from spilling onto the blood-soaked sand. Crying now, he pleaded for mercy. Thorma didn't understand all the words he spoke, but he knew the look. Standing over the prone figure, Thorma's shadow fell across the youth's face like a bad omen. Slowly, he raised his sword, its edge reflecting red from the nearby flames. He hesitated for only a second as the boy tightly closed his eyes. Then he drove the death-bringer into the boy's heart. Silence hung damp and heavy for a moment after the boy gave a pitiful grunt, and his body twisting in pain. Then he lay still. A ghostly voice from long ago whispered in Thorma's ear, then vanished in a rush of noise and confusion. Thorma withdrew his sword from the boy's chest, turned and walked on up the beach as the horde in front of him moved through the village. They were after gold and silver. Several bags of the precious metal lay hidden in the basement of the monastery, the monks having received these gifts from the poor villagers and outlying peasants in return for penance. No one thought it strange, or if they did, at least they held their tongue, that only the monks could talk to this new God, a God who was supposed to be so merciful. They simply gave their meager offerings in hope of a heavenly reward. The Christian monks had come into this land about the same time the last Roman legions were leaving. The pagan tribes had been very reluctant to change their way and abandon their old gods. Consequently, many a monk had been sacrificed on a druid's fire for their efforts to spread Christianity among the Celtic tribes. But eventually an impression was made in the pagan land, and Christianity began to spread. Tom Lee had gradually slowed his eager rush through the village and was now walking somewhat sullenly through the smoke of this man-made hell. His senses were nearly overwhelmed as his eyes darted from one side of the narrow street to the other. He watched the many burning huts belch reddish flames, spewing forth a foul stench as they burnt. The pungent black smoke was like a living thing as it swirled around dead bodies and crying women. Its groping tentacles choking the small children who crawled in the blood of their parents. Blood that ran like a small stream through the center of the village to gradually stain the sand around the dragon ships. Sparks flew about like fireflies and stung Tom Lee's eyes as he trudged towards the far edge of the burning village. Gone was the youthful enthusiasm that had driven him off the ship and up towards the village only an hour earlier. And now tears ran down his cheek. Most of the tears fell because of the smoke, but some fell because of the smell of death and the cries of the dying tore at his soul.
the camera's in the right place because Tom's a little bit taller than I am.
Or that you will be.
I guess that'll work. Okay. So I'm going to continue with a book I'm in the process of writing called The Truth About Plumbing. This chapter is called Waste Not, Want Not. Unfortunately, when and where water flows into a house, there must also be a way for it to flow out. Wastewater is inevitable, and a separate system to remove it must be designed, built, and maintained. This may sound simple, but it is anything but in a building with plumbing fixtures at different levels and perhaps on different floors. Inside a system of connected pipes of varying sizes and at different heights, complex air pressure and fluid dynamics are at play. If a P-trap is too low, it will slow or stop normal drainage. If it's too high, some of the water in the trap can get sucked out, allowing sewage gas into the house. If a fixture's drain is not vented properly, water will remain in a pipe just as the liquid in a straw won't drain if you place your thumb firmly on top, blocking air from entering. If you don't know what you're doing, toilet wastewater can easily end up in a bathtub, washing machine water can flood your basement, sinks and tubs can overflow, and methane sewage gas can permeate your house. If something happens to prevent the outgoing flow, you will be in deep doo-doo. There was the time I received a call from someone who owned a rental house in Sylva. His tenant said something smelled funny and was wondering if it could be related to the plumbing system. It was an old building, probably dating back to the 1920s, with cast iron pipes that were most likely retrofitted because the original house predated modern standard indoor plumbing. There was a warped, paint-peeled door sealed by a padlock that led to a steep staircase and down into the 5-foot-high underground crawl space housing the oil-burning furnace, the electric water heater, and some scattered lumber, stovepipe, and other assorted bric-a-brac surrounded by the building's cinder block foundation. Hesitantly, the landlord unlocked and removed the padlock from the door and opened it for perhaps the first time in a decade. We began to descend the dark staircase, but had to stop about halfway down where we met the water line. The crawl space was filled like an underground swimming pool. The oil burner and water heater were halfway submerged. There were islands of human waste floating everywhere. The smell of urine was pervasive. Before finding and fixing the plumbing problem, the first task at hand was to empty the basement of water and all floating matter. The incoming main water valve under the house was submerged. So, we had to turn off the water at the street in an underground box where the meter was located. Then we brought in a sump pump and 100 feet of garden hose to begin the process of removing the water. It took 2 or 3 days to pump out enough water to allow us to stand on the ground in rubber boots that came up almost to our knees. Then, with 5-gallon buckets and rubber gloves, we began to fish out the floating turds that were all around us as we stooped, in the 5-foot-high space. 5 gallons of solid human waste is quite heavy. And you really don't want to spill it as you ascend the staircase that enters into the kitchen and then traverse the linoleum floor to find the back door to the house. But that was the task at hand as bucket after splashing bucket made its way up and out. We rented a porta potty in which to dump the buckets, and by the time we finished, it was nearly full. Back down in the dark basement, memories, perhaps ancestral, conjured scenes of being imprisoned in dungeons where the inmates were left to live in their own squalor. Yet, somehow, those of us who were involved found ourselves laughing uncontrollably at the situation in which we found ourselves. I'm sure the laughter resulted in somewhat more spillage along the way, but we're only human after all, and stress levels will eventually reach a point at which you either cry, laugh, or break. In this case, the laughter came first and set the tone for things to follow, fortunately, because it wasn't about to get better or easier as we moved through this process. Once all the shit and water were gone, we now had to figure out why the water wasn't draining. There was a floor drain in the concrete basement bottom that obviously wasn't functioning. We tried snaking it to no avail. The snake went in through the floor drain for about 20 feet, which was well beyond the foundation of the house, but then stopped cold. The drain pipe was more than 5 feet underground outside the house. We never actually determined to where this pipe ultimately drained, but it probably ended in the creek that ran about 15 feet behind the house. We dug down a few feet outside the foundation to unearth an old shattered red clay pipe that was filled with soil and tree roots. At the time, we thought we had made a major archaeological discovery that proved, contrary to conventional historical beliefs, that the Roman Empire must have actually made its way to the Western Hemisphere long before Columbus, transporting its most advanced technology to this very location in Western North Carolina. It turned out this ancient relic of a pipe was the original house sewer drain that carried the wastewater somewhere. It apparently stopped functioning sometime in the past and was replaced by another pipe that connected the house to the city sewage system. The newer pipe also was no longer functioning. We dug down outside the foundation of the house to discover a collapsed 4-inch Orangeburg sewer pipe. Orangeburg pipe essentially consists of a cardboard tube coated with a thick layer of tar. The fact this type of material was ever conceived of and used for long-term application in plumbing is a testament to the absolute necessity for government regulatory intervention. The tar breaks down, water seeps in the cardboard, becomes mush, and the pipe collapses. Utterly useless. We can be almost certain the Roman material, as brittle and primitive as it may have been, was far superior and lasted much longer. So, for God knows how long, all the wastewater produced in the house ran down the drain pipes, out the sewage line, hit the blockage at the collapsed Orangeburg pipe, then backed up through the floor drain and filled up the basement. There you have it. We hired a backhoe to dig a trench to the city sewage inlet and laid a brand new 4-inch PVC sewage pipe that now connects it to the building drain at the ceiling level of the crawl space. Then we jackhammered out the non-functional floor drain at the bottom of the crawl space, framed out a box, and installed a sump pump to prevent any accumulation of water that might seep in through the foundation during times of heavy rain and flooding. We ran an electrical wire to the pump and a 1.5-inch pipe from the sump pump out to the sewage drain. Yes, a sump pump is another device that combines water with electricity and moving mechanical parts. What could go wrong? It'll work for a while until the sump pump eventually fails, like all other mechanical devices. Then a future tenant will call a future landlord to say that something smells funny. With luck, no one will be electrocuted while descending the stairs after unlocking the mystery door that will have remained unopened for an unknown number of years.
And it's about to rain and rain. Thank you, Abram. Susan. Boy, you're really on the list there.
Well, this is quite a different, whole different ballgame. I'm going back to the theme of children, I think, or something.
This is a venue of infinite variety.
All right, so I have a chapbook of poems I read from before. I'm going to read a few more from that. I am a teacher, so I had a few about kids, about children. This one is called Autistic Son. Before winter, while drinking water dark with leaf rot, he sees the late-born insect drown, listens to an inaudible song. His mother interrupts him and he screams, "God is right and I am right and you are wrong." He kicks her in the shin. She lets him alone. He knows the worm, studies dirt and roots, mold, swell, and decay. The taste of it, the smell, the color, the feel, the soundless glory. Before winter grow, even the crow, all which he hates, grows wonderfully wordless before winter. And then this one is called Transference. And I wrote this when I was when I was a student. And, you had these classes where you had it was the psychology class where you got to work in the clinic and observe children who were coming into the clinic for largely due to psychological issues. So, transference. The girl is 4 and bald. In the throes of a daydream, she stops pulling her hair out just long enough to yell, "Stop, old man," calling her brother by his pet name. More like an old woman hovering, he is 9 and considers himself responsible for her. "Imelda, you're pulling," as she pulls harder. Each fine blonde hair another memory he did not then, cannot now, but partially own. Another of how many we want to know on the video behind the one-way glass. "Imelda, don't pull." Having read how scientists can tag a monarch butterfly without disturbing the dust on its wings, he wonders how many secret scars each bears as property to study. He imagines her hands are monarchs, gathering in the trees, migrating through the symptoms, tearing loose the tags and labels of abuse, of being and not being Randy and Imelda. Jump ahead. This one is called The Cat. Our identification with warm-blooded animals is hypocritical. In truth, we long to turn reptilian, tough but for underbellies. When the earth is scorched, our houses underground, our children encased each night in oxygen-fed eggs, then there will be no place or room for even domesticated animals. Won't living underground be more secure, less cumbersome, plugging ourselves into, quote, the outside? Surely being so limited in the space we can consume will make us less destructive, if not less greedy. Enormous underground factories will send shipments out into the wasteland, a giant dome, supplying and disposing. What will a child think then of pictures of the hippopotamus, the dragonfly, or of some child ancestor holding on to a large, sleepy cat? Got one more. This is called the barn swallow. Love often calls to us, and we call back as children, full of need, yet all-knowing, presumptuous, unashamed, lovely. The first thing I ever loved purely was a swallow. After it died, I gave up rescuing things so fragile. Yet look how well I still remember her. Breast flushed faintly red, flung into the air, half diving, half flying back to me. 2. If our true existence is a perfect state of prayer, neither to be reconciled to mere survival, nor deluded into blind worship of all that history, art, and religion promises of being human, then we all have 2 lives, the infinite and the dying. Each at any moment reigns, but much merely exists, wounded in between. 3. The future always sleeps, but we will never sleep beside it, counting backward through insomnia toward our first grief unshared. To feed a thing or teach her how to fly is not to promise life, any more than do love or suffering as she dies. Yet, how vast the act of breathing becomes when we are caught, breathless, bound within the least stretch of neck and wing toward flight, expansive, then stiffening, as the sky fills with swallows feeding.
Matt, I believe it is you.
Okay.
No.
Excuse me, Matt.
Okay. 1 second. I guess you, Albert, but said, "Hey, you mind holding my phone so you can film this thing?" So a couple people said they were going to be here, but they canceled due to work things, and it's easier for me to just say this is the part that I'm doing.
Someone younger, I beg of you. I have trouble with phones.
Me too. I've got a dumb phone, so.
Right now you switch. It's been a while since I've used this thing as the all right then. Oh, could you make it other way? Yeah, turn it this side. Okay. For those of you who don't know what I do, I like to take the song style, the discography of an artist I like, and try to make a story out of it. This is actually my first country music rendition, and it's from someone who was definitely very talented, but never got the respect they deserved, and they died before they had a chance to get back on the horse. So when you figure out who this person is, you'll probably remember how this person died. It's not hard understanding the rhymes and reasons of life. Sure, many days feel like one big circus. Came to town for a long visit. Yet, you don't need experience of Rocky Mountain High to get over the stress. So, a small daydream is precious and forms the foundation for many happy places. Far from the sticky summer weather that sneaks back no matter the season, binding us back to reality, and not to the paradise we desire to consciously shape. It's not our fault we're prisoners of this mortal world, but it still sucks. In my life, I've seen despair coming from giving up fast too soon. I need to fix that. Almost like they're saying I'm leaving on a jet plane for an eternity of gloom. Not even having a proper farewell party to find someone worse off. So they can think how yesterday might not be as bad as remembered. Proving hope exists here, there, and ever in some odd form. Follow me and I can show you that there is more to life than your sorrow. After all, the sun shining on my shoulders is a result of looking on the bright side, by taking all of my memories and arranging them like a museum to comfort, and using everyday thoughts and wishes to keep me out of the raging darkness. While not everyone knows how to swim in the immense river of love, allowing many to fall back into that sweet misery, trapped and drying. That's it. From not knowing the higher ground was right in front of the sinkers. So don't worry, because you can always fly way back to your happy place, even though it takes more than 2 shots of confidence and joy to start. So the Dreamland Express is on its current journey to pick up other lost souls, asking, take me to tomorrow, despite never truly arriving for anyone. I wish that I knew how it would feel to be free, but I have different taste, and even with the right tools, fixing one person's voice is never the same as the box of answers was void of instructions on dealing with evolving sadness, meaning it's up to you to reach out to tell others what's wrong with you and what's making the rippling waters of your mind churn faster and greater than usual. It amazes me how many people turn away from another compassionate soul, thinking the game is over and wallowing in despair is the new norm. Said, I've seen how the seasons of the heart barely change when times are good. Like a sad song, the melody of misery keeps repeating as no one wants to change. Said, making me think of deserted islands where nothing positive goes in or comes out. We're all children of the universe, and helping others should be a natural thing. Yet the dreams of so many go unanswered, leading to the fear of failure, going around and around, preventing lost souls from seeing salvation. I know not everyone wants to accept the poems, prayers, and promises from others, as they think these gestures are nothing more than more junk for the pile. Try to catch another butterfly and see if it makes you feel a little better. Follow it by a heart-to-heart chat with someone who is also cheering up. Even my sweet lady of luck needs to come for a visit to test the waters, as I've been sleeping alone with my thoughts buzzing like a bunch of bees and not knowing if I'll feel that country love of a warm sunrise with a soft breeze. Making things worse, Lady Luck, she won't fly me away for even the brief afternoon until I find the chosen ones who can lead others back into the loving light, away from the downhill stuff that masks the pain of going through this life. I know some of these days are diamonds instead of life and amazing colors shining through. But the truth is, some days are stone, cold, immovable, and not much can be done. So your happiest thoughts are like keeping wildflowers in a mason jar. Out of the way, they are fragile, said, kept from the fire and rain of the present. The problem is that these memories went in 2 different directions of life. The 2 may change to the wheel of misfortune taking them away. You need to hold on tightly, as no one is along for the tumultuous ride, said, to the one world where everyone lives without worrying about anything. So don't become the hitchhiker that never has a plan or destination until the eclipse of reality casts its massive shadow, obscuring the path to happiness. I want to live in a place like that, but humans are easily scared creatures, and the spirit of adventure stands as a colossal wall without end to look around. It's hard to be on the road to change, as you don't know where you'll end up. As we want to know when we'll be back home again with loved ones. But the gravel on the road often serves as a constant companion in the isolation. This is the point when others turn back, saying, "Country road, take me home, country roads." So while others want to sail away home, hoping that the current takes them elsewhere, failing to see that true love takes time and love is needed to flee the darkness. Whatever it needs to do is hear the song for the life most desired, and even if you're not dancing with the mountains, a few notes can reveal the path, as the music is you, and feeling every beat lifts the woes, said, letting in new joys. I said, this world is for you to call home even the darkest of times. And if you ever need a friend, you've got me and other travelers of the wastelands. He said, alternately calling for someone to find them and become their anchor. Life is hard, so don't be children asking for ponies that never get bigger when the inner self is wilder than a long ocean voyage on the Calypso. That's the influence of the American child wanting to go far and fast, like eagles and horses racing each other on the open plains of old, hoping for the two races to merge into a Pegasus, master of land and skies, feeling the trade winds on their backs. So, like a friend wanting to guide many to the wild country, away from the chaos of cities and uncaring people, polluting others with the noise that makes up the very late night radio, with listeners looking for space to call home for a few hours into slumber. Without any reprieve, many people learn the harder they fall from overbearing stress. Life is so good to not be enjoyed, even though it's hard to find the silver lining. But the sayings of the old folks have become the norm, obscuring the vision. So then again, they're not looking for any gospel changes that allow for swift relief. Tremble if you must, but it's a promising sign that you're willing to change. I'm sorry if I'm not the knight in shining armor you wanted me to be, and I can't escape looking out for those in need instead of a friend needing to adapt his form. Just remember, love is the master, said, and it's not always flowers and candy galore. I know in my heart everyone can find where they're meant to be amongst the singing skies and dancing waters, he said, thought about not that long ago, making the wind song stronger, he said, while caressing the tired soul, and the trail of tears long since dried up from the abundant golden sun above, leading many to look back and ask whose garden was this after they see their former lives adorned with the flowers that shattered the stone of grief. It doesn't take listening to ancient rhymes for people to understand the simple truth that the gift you are can be shared with anyone wanting a little bit of joy, and at last you can say the battle is over and trouble has been defeated as the victors ride on the amazing wings of a golden eagle. It said, into the never-ending sunrise, with many proudly saying, this is the first day of the rest of my life.
Sean did.
Yep.
Yep. Yay! I had no idea his discography was so extensive.
Well,
We will see you all 18th of October if you are able to make it.
they saw
Thursday night.
Sometime.